other than my very wet hair, I'm looking okay. Been quite a while since I did this, but the house is empty, which is very rare, and I'm not napping. So basically, Tuesdays, sometimes Jack steals the car, which means I have to walk our child to nursery. And today I did that in the storm, so hence post shower wet hair. So apologies. The setup isn't great, but I thought, you know what? I've been dying to talk about some books, and I really wanted to do a tier ranking. I mean, we're still technically in January as well, so it's a good time to do it. Let me just check that everyone can hear me. Yes, you can. Okay, cool. So we're going through my reads. It looks like so much now that I've laid it out, and I am going to really try and be brief this time. I know I am very bad at just talking for so long about books that these get a little bit lengthy. So I'm really going to try. The reason why I went live is so that I don't then have to edit after. It forces me to get a video out, and hey. So I'm really going to try hard and be brief. So let's get started. Why are you there? There we go. So these are my rankings. S, A, B, C, and we've just got F. There's going to be some things going in F. And then D and F. So things I just did not finish. Let's start with those. This one, I think this was like an indie horror thing. I kind of like the sound of the concept. I got about halfway through. It just wasn't working for me, unfortunately. I'm going to try and ramp me up a little bit. And what was the other one? Where are you? There's a couple. Hickory Staff. So Hickory Staff is a very chunky book that I've owned for maybe 20, 25 years. I've owned it a very long time, and it's funny when I have another go at reading books like that. I might have like an old piece of paper I was using as a bookmark, and so my goal was to at least get past that. But it's funny that even being older, I understand why I stop at that point. But I did get past it. I think it was like a 600-page book. I got 300 pages in, and it was just kind of boring. I think because this was a bit older, it was doing some like it is a portal fantasy, which I guess you don't see very often, but it was just doing some standard fantasy world building that was not very interesting. And it kind of reminded me how good we have it at the moment. But that's good because I think this was a trilogy, so I've saved myself having to read a full trilogy there. And then I DNF'd gotten the Gumiho. It was another. I'm sorry, I've said that really. I think it's Gumiho. This is like inspired by K dramas, and it's about like ancient spirits and gods who are living among us in the modern world. And it would have been very easy to finish because this was quite a quick read, but this has the same issue as another book I ended up DNFing the year before, which is a ancient or very old character that behaves like a child, and it is really annoying. I think that is my instant like DNF thing. If you have a main character who acts really immaturely, and doesn't have a good reason for their immaturity, You know, you can write an immature character, but when they're our main character and they're like an ancient god and they act like a 15-year-old, it's an instant no. It really put me off, and it was not as funny as I wanted it to be, which is a shame. At the time, I was in the mood for something lighthearted, but yeah, it just wasn't it. That is it for DNFs. But off the back of that, I'm going to throw in a couple of one or two things maybe that I would have DNF'd if it weren't for other reasons. One being the Lightkeeper. I really did not like this. It is set in a very real place in England, where people will throw themselves over the cliff. And it is obviously a subject matter that carries weight, and I do not think it pulled off. I did not think the main story was very interesting either. This could just be a taste thing. These types of books are not for me. The only reason I read it is because last Christmas I got given 3 very small books, and I said, hey, I never read every book I am given at Christmas, but they're both 3 little short ones, and so I kind of did it as a little challenge to myself. So that's the only reason I kept going. Otherwise, I probably would have given it 10-20 pages and gone, nah, not for me. Oh, so now I could go to my other should have DNF'd, or I can go to my other books from that batch. Let's do that instead. So one of those was Orbital, which I am putting in B. Orbital is really interesting. It is about astronauts orbiting the planet, and the chapters are organized by like the rotations and path that they're taking rather than the day. But it just sort of follow a full day. They kind of see all of Earth over a day. It has some beautiful writing. It's really poetic, but also nothing happens. So if you are in the mood for writing that is very pretty, very slow, very thoughtful, give it a read. But if you really need a plot, don't bother. Which is why it is in a B, because it could very firmly be an S in some aspects or an F in others, just for me. And then the third book from that set was The Girl Who Turned Into a Pair of Chopsticks. This was 3 short stories in a collection. As you would expect from something with that title, it was kind of weird. But by the end of the last story, I said, you know what, I'm in. I'm here for this. The reason being is that the last story is about a guy who just like crawls around on the floor and just like pulls himself along, and then the main character finds him and then also starts pulling. Very weird to describe, but it had the vibes of like a Junji Ito story, because they're just human beings, but then the way that like they're treated by his family is like they're dogs, and they're the 2 people going to breed together. It's very weird, but I decided by the end I was vibing with that weirdness. So I at least enjoyed. It really was a mix. It was hate it, middling, really enjoying it out of those 3. Right, I might just tackle this. Sorry, let's keep that in view. Let's just pick things at random. Strange Pictures. I think Strange Pictures is an enjoyable B. These are kind of horror stories based around mysteries presented through pictures, and then you kind of realize that the stories are connected in some way. Probably I would have liked the creepiness factor to be raised a bit more, but it was interesting and fun enough. Sociopath by, oh, she says her name so many, and it's the one audiobook on this list, and I can't remember how you say her second name. Patrick is, and is also really small to read on this. I read this because I was, why do I want this? I'm gonna put it here for now. I listened to this. I was kind of in the mood for another memoir that had a bit of a bite to it. This is really interesting. I've seen comments of people kind of questioning her science ethic, or questioning if she actually is a sociopath, but I almost feel like some of their arguments surely prove her correct, but I didn't dig in enough to go into that, so we'll just base it off how I saw the book. It was one of those a chance to see things from a very, very different perspective to my own. I cannot imagine kind of feeling that you don't have emotions, feeling very separate, and if you're after a memoir where there's kind of exciting things happening, there's learning what she does to kind of have I think she described it as like a release, whether that's like stealing cars or borrowing cars or doing something else. So those stories were kind of interesting, but also her dad comes across as like a proper shit by the end of the book. But the partner that she meets is very lovely, and finding out how they kind of came together, fell apart, came together was very nice. It was interesting and entertaining. Don't know if you should use it as a way to learn about sociopathy, but interesting nonetheless. I bought 3 Junji Ito collections, and the thing I cannot remember. I don't know if any of them particularly stood out. I can't remember if I had any like really favorite stories. But it's Junji Ito, so you're always gonna have a good time. Even if one of the stories doesn't work for you, the next one probably will. It's Junji Ito, isn't it? What to say on that? I don't normally include manga, so these all were pulled from my Storygraph. I don't normally track my manga reads, but because I don't want it to be filled with like multiple volumes if I decide to read a lot of something. But I included these because I thought, hey, they're chunky collections. They can go in. Before I get into the next one, I'm just gonna blast. No, we'll do this one. I'm gonna put it as a C. Mordu. This was really disappointing. I was really craving like dark, thoughtful fantasy. I wanted a China Mieville Baslag novel. I wanted weird and interesting, and there's a lot of weirdness in it. There is some cool stuff in here, but I think what really I felt like there was almost like a paint of weirdness, but the story itself wasn't that interesting for a very long time, and then by the time it does kind of get more interesting, I've lost any kind of enthusiasm. And I think an issue as well is that it feels like it's following the beats of a children's story, plus the main character and his friends are children, and it doesn't mean we can't follow a child's character, but it really felt like it would have done. I think if I was this guy's agent, I would have said, look, make some tweaks, take out the adult content, and aim this at kids, because you have a children's book on your hands. So it just didn't quite deliver, sadly. Though there was a couple of points where I was tempted to DNF, and I never quite committed. I think I'm glad I read it, but I'm not carrying on. It's either a trilogy or a series, but I'm not carrying on with it. I'll do it again. Let's do Way of Kings. It was a read, S tier, still brilliant. Same with Words of Radiance. These will forever be my favourite books. Some of my favourite books. The Way of Kings was my way back into fantasy. And it's still great on a reread. I think Oathbringer dips down to an A, along with Rhythm of War. That one. Also, let's rearrange that. So the first two really hold up on a reread. The next two after that, I do have to then start agreeing with people who think that these needed editing down. And I think as well, on a reread, when you kind of know what's happening, it's extra annoying as well when you get thrust into like a POV that you're not interested in. Basically, one of the things that I'm not a fan of. Sorry, I'm gonna say some names wrong. I read it in hardback first, so some names will be wrong, some will be correct. So I don't say Shallan. I hate that version of it. To me, it's Shallan. So apologies. I like Shallan as a character. I don't like the stupid nonsense with the multiple people in her head. That might sound harsh. I know it is a disorder in real life that obviously doesn't have magical powers included. But the way it is presented here, I think it really hits home that Veil especially is a manufactured persona, and it just doesn't work for me that this manufactured persona then has a mind of her own, or we think she has a mind of her own. Sorry, minor spoilers here. Just mute for a minute. I think it proves the silliness when actually she can just dissolve into nothing at the end of Rhythm of War. Like, you've grown, you don't need me anymore, I was you all along. I think as well because of the type of character she's trying to be, as this like cool, and she does point this out to herself, in that no, she doesn't. She was never a thief. She doesn't have the experience. She's exactly as experienced as Shallan is, but she waltzes around like she's this well-trained thief. And I feel like there was another thread I wasn't that interested in with Rhythm of War. But I am glad I reread them because there is so much that happens at the end of Oathbringer and the end of Rhythm of War I had just completely forgotten about. So for context, I was rereading these so that I was more familiar when I get onto Wind of Truth, which is still not happened yet. So I wanted to get all of these reread in 2025. Glad I did it. And especially glad because, oh my, yeah, there was so much I forgot. So much. The amount of things that happen at the end of Rhythm War is insane, to the point where I've written them down. I have notes in my like reading journal about the stuff that I had forgotten. So the Sanderland is gonna happen. It definitely still happens. And I kind of, on a reread, I kind of like. I'm sure there's people who hate it, but I like the setup of being trapped in the tower, not having your usual powers, especially for Kaladin, who at this point in the story is so OP and is about to be even more OP, but he is so strong. So to like take everything away from him, like it is a trope, but I think it's a really good trope to use when you're this far into a series. And I know it has its haters, but I really like Navani doing science. Her doing experiments and figuring shit out is so good. I love it. And I know there are people out there who like that is their worst storyline, but for me, I absolutely adore it, and I'm so happy that Navani gets more time to shine in this book. She is a fantastic character. Okay, we're moving on. House of My Mother. I think I'm gonna put this bottom of A. So this is by Sherry Frankie. This is the one of the children of a family that did family vlogging, and it after vlogging for 7 years, controversy happened when it was found out her mother was like abusing 2 of the younger kids. So very serious, and this was this story was in the ether as well because a documentary came out about it, which I think she wasn't happy with. I Am Only Human, I did watch the documentary. I am sorry, Sherry Frankie. But seeing things from her perspective is really powerful. Because there's stuff in here, especially towards the end, that you just would not hear about otherwise or see otherwise, because they are so personal to her. Like once we're at the point where she's basically cut off from the rest of her family, I cannot imagine how painful that was for her at the age that she was. Really powerful. The only reason I read this in like a day. It was very readable. The only problem is if we're talking about, it's obviously hard because it's like people are writing about their lives, and the fact she is so young still and was able to read this is like incredible. You know, bodes well for her future. But you are, I think, if you are writing in this kind of genre of memoir, you are now going to be put compared to I'm Glad My Mom Died, which is the current gold standard. I don't think her writing is quite at that level, which is absolutely fair. Like, is she even in her 20s yet? Like, she might even still be a teenager. Sorry, just a second. Okay, no, sorry, I just need to just check that we're still okay. Oh, yeah, I think we're fine. Yeah, okay, so, what was I saying? So yeah, obviously, Jeanette McCurdy is older and has been working in media for a long time. Put down. I'm glad my mom died was such a good book. So anyway, this isn't me to like. I don't want to slag off Sherry Frankie. Just the writing aspect isn't there, but if she chooses to keep writing, then I think she could do well in the future. Obviously, I don't know if you could get more memoirs done, but anyway, let's carry on. This is a funny one to put on because it's the end of a series, but it is my favourite series ever. I think it is just a B. I don't think I had quite as much fun as I did with the one before it. So the one before it's called The Brothers Cabal, and that is one of my favourite books ever. It's so funny and has my favourite vampire character to ever be created. However, this one does feature a big spider demon who is a lady from the waist up with giant boobs and who likes to wear jumpers. And she's really if you like characters that are unapologetically evil and are having a good time doing it, Johann Cabal is a series for you. It's so funny, it's excellent. In London, lumping this in with Mordew, I knew China Mieville had done a YA book. I couldn't quite remember which was it. This is it, and in fact, I think it reads on the younger end of YA. It does kind of come across as a kid's book. It's a very good kid's book. if you have children in the like 10 to 12 range, I don't know, or nieces or nephews, and you want to get them into China Mieville early, I think kids would love this, and I bet it's not shared with kids often enough. In fact, I'd be surprised if it's even put in the kids section, but it kind of, that's where it needs to live, I think. And it has some fun stuff and great concepts, but I just don't enjoy reading kids' books, unfortunately. Next, A City on Mars. Did I put this on? No, I am going to put it in A, actually. So, these are two cartoonists, a husband and wife duo, and they wanted to ask the question, is living on other planets, what is this? Is this possible? Is the science required? So we go into lots of science about space, being in space. But it's also just like so many obvious things that you go, yeah, the likes of Elon Musk kind of go, well, we'll have a city on Mars in 10 years. They're clearly just like not thinking about. But half the book is that leaves the science behind. They can do as much as they can in that area, and I'd say about half the book is the legality of settling another planet. And at the time, I kind of wished I was getting more science on my book. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm that interested in all of these like legal intricacies. However, I'm putting it in A because since reading it, some of those little factoids have come to my head, and in that way that makes you feel smart. When you have a conversation and you go, oh, you mean like such a country did back in the 80s, and you're like, yes, I read it in a book. So for making me feel very smart at reading non-fiction books, it gets to go at A. Because yeah, the fact that it shared these factoids and I've been able to retain them, it's definitely done something right there. Oh man, Claire Keegan, Small Things Like These. this is the reason why I quite enjoy a book reading goal. You know, there's lots of people who say, don't bother like reading to numbers, just read what you like, and that's, you know, that's fine. But because I have this shit, I've read 4, I don't know, can you see my mouse? I've read 4 books that are over 1,000 pages in that year. There's other books that are over 700. There's books over 5. So for me, having that chance towards the end of the year where I'm like, ooh, if I read a couple of really short books, I can, and that's what I did. I knew I was a few away from 50. I was like, that's satisfying, isn't it? So I grabbed a few short books. And, you know, short books aren't always what I reach for. But I think you can find real gems, and small things like these is a fantastic book, and I picked it up at exactly the right time. It's set on the run up to Christmas, set in Ireland in the 80s, and the shortness is to its credit. It does exactly what it needs to do. It's thoughtful, and you'll read the back of the book, you'll read the blurb and see what it's about, and you'll think that you might get these like really sensational scenes, and you get like a couple, but I think I'll try not to, I don't want to spoil it because I read this in one go. you can just read this in an evening, but I think the kind actions that someone does are very simple, but they're so powerful. I'm not expecting to explain this very well because I'm not trying to ruin it, but just if as you approach Christmas, give it a read. It's so good. Like, I was actually sad I got this from the library because I want extra copies to just hand out to people. I'd be like, here. Next is Bookshop Woman. The reason why I'm laughing is because this is a memoir, and I didn't know it was a memoir. Somehow, I thought this was fiction. I don't know. I just missed that description. I don't know how it happened. But so, and I only realized at the end of the book because I think there was like and this is what she's doing now. I'm like, you mean she's real? so this is about a woman who like joins it's not a dating site, but it's a site for just like meeting people and having a chat, and her thing becomes, let me recommend you a book, and it's just like her experiences of meeting people, coming out of her shell, having new experiences, and it's quite nice. It's also like nothing amazing or special or sensational, but it's just quite a lovely book. If, like me, you kind of want something, you have a secondary read while you do something big, this is like a nice book to dip in and out of, but it didn't wow me, but I also don't want to, is it actually C? I'm going to leave it in B, because I don't know how I would have felt differently knowing that I'm off from the beginning. So that, because I was critiquing it as if someone was writing fiction, I was like, can they not come up with something more interesting? It's like, oh, it's their life. Okay. I don't want to do Hog King first. Let's do Arm of the Sphinx. I don't remember what happens in Arm of the Sphinx first. I think I put it top of B? Or maybe, no, I think it is an A. We'll do Hawking next to it. So these are the second and third books in the like Books of Babel, Tower of Babel series. The one that starts with okay, what is it called? Senlin Ascends. Now I knew going in that people love the first book and then it drops off for people. I think part of the issue is that once we get to Arm of the Sphinx, we kind of lose. So in book one, he goes through different levels of the tower, and so you get like, you explore the outside, the basement, and then 3 floors after that. So I think there's like this element of exploration that's really exciting, and there's just less of it in these, especially the Hodking. We stay in one floor for quite a long time, because it's no longer about exploration, it's about forward, moving the overarching plot forward. Having said that, in Arm of the Sphinx, the cast widens, and I really like the cast. It's a really nice group of characters. They're really fun. Oh, what was I thinking of? I think so. I'm currently reading Empire of the Dawn, and I love that Jay Kristoff will just leave you in a situation where you realize, oh hey, like everyone in this room is a woman. You know, this person and that vampire and that, you know, leader. We're with all the ladies right now. There is also, it kind of splits into men and women, but whatever. Whatever. But Bancroft kind of does that here, where he just like, in a very natural feeling way, he sets up these different characters who come together, and you're like, oh hey, I get a scene with like 3 very different women, you know, very different personalities, all really nicely well written, and that's just like, that's nice, because sometimes fantasy just be very, very male. I think it's less so these days, but it's just nice when you're like, yeah, hanging out with the ladies. Next, Hell Followed With Us. Probably gonna put that there. Do I still want? I'm gonna move all this all down. Hell Followed With Us is post-apocalyptic. It's a trans boy who is has been like infected with this thing that's going to turn him into the Seraphim, or this like monster / angel thing, and he's escaped from the people that did it, who are like a Christian or Christian-esque group of weirdos. And he ends up hanging out with a bunch of people who were working in a like LGBTQ plus center, youth center. So he then just gets to hang out with a load of LGBTQ people. he finds his people, essentially. So to me, I knew this was YA, and I do struggle with YA sometimes. It felt a little bit wish fulfillment-y, which is a funny thing to say considering how horrifying it gets as it goes on. So, oh, you just happen to be the people who survived all happen to be gay? Okay. But having said that, it's clearly not for me. If if you're a gay teen, if you're a trans teen, if you're both of those things, whatever, you might just really appreciate, like I've just said, I appreciated hanging out with some women. You might appreciate hanging out with a bunch of people that aren't straight, aren't cis. And so this book might end up being a revelation to some people. The story was cool. I was intrigued. I stuck with it to the end. It was pretty cool. There was some good body horror stuff going on in it. Very weird, very interesting. This was to get my goal. It's 3 short stories. 2 of them very similar to each other, and the third one I just sort of like was half paying attention to. So that's all you need to know. Blood over Brighthaven. Okay, I think I'm maybe being overly generous with this. I'm actually going to put this in B. Does that mean... I'm going to leave it there. A lot of people gave this 5 stars. And it was very good. When we find out what's going on, when there's like a turning moment, when we hit that moment, that is a page turning, cannot stop. Oh shit, that it is a big moment. It's powerful. The fact that this is basically about white feminism, it's someone who has a mentality that probably easily could have been mine, of women have been left out. We need to move forward. Although she's more selfish than I would like to think I am. she wants to move forward if she gets to be ahead. But she's dealing with sexism, and so that is the issue. That is, what's the word? She's tunnel visioned. She's tunnel visioned to that issue in particular. But then as the book goes on, she realizes, hey, there's a whole entire group of people that are being screwed over by our society, and I know little to nothing about them. So her learning curve with that is very good. Yeah, and I think it's great. But I never felt like I loved it, and that's the only reason why it's not S. It wasn't, maybe it's not you, it's me, but it never fully grabbed me in a way that I wanted it to. But it is excellent. It's as good as a lot of people say. It's still a heavy recommendation. I might actually move it above Junji Ito, because it was consistently good, whereas those aren't necessarily that. I don't know if I'm being generous, but we'll see. Murderbot, exit strategy. After watching Murderbot the series, I was like, hey, you know what? I thought I was done with this. Maybe I want to carry on with Murderbot. So I went on to I think this is like book 4. And hey, I actually have had it pre-downloaded on my Kobo. So it was already paid for. And it's another Murderbot. And actually having read it, it was good fun. I do think I am done with Murderbot. I would still highly recommend Murderbot to people who haven't started it. It's really good fun, and it's a really good way of like getting back into reading or dealing with a slump. But now that I've read a few books, I think I might be done. But don't hold me to that. Beyond Trans, does gender matter? This is a bit of a weird one because it is very textbooky. But if you're interested in this subject. It's very well done. I'm just gonna work it in the middle. I'm gonna stick it in. So, this is I think he's a professor, but he is looking at 3 or 4 main kind of arguments that surround gender identity, and whether it's necessary. One is like the infamous bathrooms. One is like university submissions, and there was another one. And it's just him talking about the issues at the moment and proposing better ways. You know, we go back and forth on the stupid toilet debate, when actually there is a way of making toilets better for everybody. And as often happens with the case, you make it better for one group of people, you actually accidentally end up helping out someone else. You know, his proposition for toilets, by the way, was, can we just have big toilets that contain the sink and the toilet and enough room, and they're also fully private? So I know Americans have really weirdly visible massive gaps around the doors, but he was like, just make them private little rooms that are unisex, and anyone and everyone can use the. It's like, yeah. And yeah, there's a lot of other stuff. And if you're sick of like nonsense debates online, I think reading something like this is a nice breath of fresh air of someone being bloody sensible. Earthy. I finally read the first book in the Wizard of Earthy series. It was very lovely. Very interesting. I don't really know how I feel about this because it was such a unique story. I actually might put it up on this thing. Yeah, I don't really know what to say. It's I finally read my first bit of Ursula K. Le Guin. I've been meaning to for ages. And I will be carrying on when I need a nice little break because the Ursy book's quite short. Doppelganger. Ooh. Might be S tier. This is someone. I know I'm rambling more than I wanted to be, but this is someone talking about the fact that she, because of her name, and other reasons, she gets mixed up with another Naomi online. Both of them had existed in kind of feminist spaces, but this other Naomi started veering off into the right wing. The reason now the right wing part of the internet, and started, you know, spouting nonsense. And she says, you know, how does this happen? And it really is a very in-depth look at where we're at now, at the people that fall into, I think she calls it the mirror world. You know, it's these people who have their version of the truth that they're very certain of, and it's very hard to convince them otherwise. This was the book that convinced me to not be so precious about books and start marking them, because I was highlighting passages, I was tabbing, I will flick through this again. It's very terrifying, but it was extremely well done. Stuffed. This is a much lighter non-fiction book, and yeah, I'm gonna put it in C. I loved Pam Vogler's other one, Scoff. It's on my shelf. Scoff. It's one of my favourite non-fiction books, like foodie books. But this one just was like so much drier. And so, even though the subject matter is basically the same, I enjoyed it a lot less. And this one took me months to finish because I just like kept putting it down for weeks at a time. So yeah, I don't know what happened. Just spruced up a bit. Spruced up. Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I actually might just like edge it there. This was lovely. This is really sweet. If you like, it's sci-fi. It's found family. I will put it slightly below because I think I had a really good time with it, but I do think 2/3 of the way through the book you start to see the formula, and you go, "Oh, okay." In a couple of pages' time, we'll be back to being like this. Okay, basically, it's a book where there are issues, but the book isn't interested in dwelling on the kind of really on the action or on the sad parts. I don't know, which sounds boring to people, but I think this just wants to focus on the characters being around each other and getting to know each other, or just being a family, and it's very sweet and lovely. And I like a bit of sweet and lovely sometimes. Batista is not that. Oh, this is where things start vying for attention. I think it might be above Brighthaven for me. Bat Eater, it's crazy. I completely forgot that the phrase Bat Eater was a real phrase used during the height of the COVID pandemic, to be abusive towards Asian people. And not everyone is going to want the subject of COVID in these books, but it is central, or it is very key to this book. The horror is fantastic. The look at race, specifically for characters in New York. Yeah, it's. I don't want to spoil it. I think if go in not knowing too much, and just let the story happen. It's brilliant. It's dark. It's sad. I don't know if it's a criticism, but be aware that the main character is a character without much agency. I did feel like things just sort of happened to her, but that is very much on purpose, and that is because of events in her life that have made her not confident enough to act. Yeah, Bat Eater was great. Considering I'm not a person that reads that much horror, this really worked for me. But something that didn't work for me. I went on holiday not last summer, year before, and we went to a nice little town that is known for its bookshops. And while I was browsing, I picked this book up, and the person working at the till said, "Oh, that book's so good! It's amazing! It's really good!" And I was like, "You know what? I'm in the town of books, and it would be lovely to take someone's recommendation." And just like I can see it's fantasy, so I'm, we're on a good start, and there's dragons involved. Yeah, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be good. Eventually, got around to reading it this year, and in that gap, I did learn that it was romantasy, and I'm not a romantasy person. Well, not romantasy how it is currently done, but I'm not gonna get into that. This is so bad. And what frustrates me is that there were little moments of promises of something good, but the world building is shallow, and things, places and things that are set up are then just thrown aside because the writer wants this girl to hang out with this dude. And also this is another case of like character that should be more mature because she goes out killing people for a living, and she just isn't. She acts like a child and it's really annoying. She's so stupid. And it also does one of the tropes that I'm not a fan of, which is the amnesia trope. The amnesia trope sucks because you're with a character who just like never has all of the information, and I just don't find that interesting. So this is why I have issues with, as much as I love that it exists, I have issues with the Captain Marvel movie. Anyway, yeah, this sucked. We didn't even really, we got like one steamy scene. You know, that's what kept me going. Halfway through, I thought, you know what? At least we'll get a little bit of spice at the end to liven things up. You know, I'll read for the spice, if nothing else. And then even that was just. If you want the spice, again, Empire of the Dawn, the Emperor of the Vampire books, they're steamy. They're steamy and they come with an actual good story. Yeah, this sucked. This was terrible. Tainted Cup. This kind of goes side by side with Blood Over Whitehaven in that these two were beloved books. So many people put these on their favourite lists of the year. I really enjoyed Tainted Cup. The world building is fantastic. Never read anything quite like it. The fact that you have this like Attack on Titan-esque backdrop while a murder mystery is happening, very cool. Murder mysteries are not fully my thing, and I do wonder if that detracted from my enjoyment of this. But I have heard. I was watching Gav Reads It All, and he read the second one, and he said he also was not as big of a fan of that one, of the first one, but loved the second. And I'm hoping that's the case for me. Tainted Cup, brilliant. It is very good. And I love well, she's a main character. She's not the main character, but like the detective, she just like swears her tits off, and I love it. The Abroad in Japan book, 10 Years in the Land of the Rising Sun. I'm gonna put it in top of B. It's perfectly enjoyable. This is, if you don't know Abroad in Japan, this is Chris Broad, who has a YouTube channel where he does videos about Japan, usually to a very high standard. I will say though, if you listen to the Abroad in Japan podcast especially, you will have heard a lot of these stories before. Kind of, and I kind of assumed that was going to be the case going in, because I don't really think the main audience for this is his followers, even though that's always going to be a nice built-in audience. I think this is aimed at the general public. But it's really well written. The way he like writes scripts, his voice is very much present in this. So still very funny. And there were some things that I didn't know. So yeah, and if you want to learn more, especially about like what it's like to teach in Japan, I think this is a good place to start. Empire of Silence. So I basically read and finished book 2 at about the same time, and by that I mean I finished it in January, so it is not included in this. This is last year. Book 1, this is Sun Eater. Obviously it's all over BookTube. June meets insert other sci-fi here. Is it A? We're gonna go top of B. Interesting. It sets the scene. I'm not at this point. I wasn't in love with it yet. I'm still not in love with it now, but I really want to give book 3 a go, considering how many people say that is their favorite book of all time or close to. So I'm going with it, and the Doom references are a little bit too obvious in this one, but I think it definitely finds its footing later on. Ring Shout. Put it there. Yeah, put it there. Ring Shout. I think this is another like booktube darling, but of a few years ago. It's been on my to-read list for ages. Finally committed. This is a group of kind of like demon hunters, but the things they hunt are the Ku Kluxes. So the oh god, Ku Klux, the KKK, are basically ran by evil demonic beings, and some of them are turned into or already are demonic beings, and yeah, they're very, very Buffy-esque, very cool, and the ending has a really good moment at it. Really good moment where there's a conversation with the main character and like the ultimate bad, that I'm not going to spoil, but I think that just like clinched it together for me. I was like, ooh, oh, that's clever. Yeah, okay. Really cool like mythology used in this. Yeah, it was great. Matrescence, non-fiction book about the act of becoming a mother, being pregnant, having a child. Very hard to read at times. The kind of book I was only able to read this after some distance from giving birth. Otherwise, I think it would have been too hard to read. I'm actually putting it at the bottom of B. I remember at the time it was very good. It's one of those books where I think at the right time to the right person, it could be very meaningful and helpful. But at the same time, I've not thought about it since I read it. I actually forgot I read it that year. Anything else I want to say on that? What was good stuff? There was good facts. I think if you are someone though who is very on the ball and very pays attention to a lot of like women's health stuff, I mean you already feel up to date, then maybe some of this won't be as new to you. But yeah, I think that there was a lot of interesting stuff in this. Things like, pulling this off the top of my head, but it's some huge number, like half of all women that give birth, or maybe even more than half, leave with trauma. And that absolutely makes sense, but never gets given the time or weight it deserves, I think. So things like that come up. And also, I really want to give it to my friend because she hated breastfeeding, and there was a whole section about the pressures of breastfeeding, and that was very good. Oh, Dungeon Crawl, let's do all these together. Dungeon Chronicle was so much hype around this. I read it, and I had to admit, when I read book 1, I was worried that this was kind of going to be just like dude's humor, and the endless loot boxes were just so uninteresting to read. Having someone go, open box 1, open box 2, open... and I'm glad I was able to skim read it. So after reading this, I was very worried that this huge series that everyone loved, I was worried it would not be for me. But I wanted to give it a good shot. So which one is it? I then read I swear I didn't do that for the suspense. Then I read this one. Oh, is it actually Top of A? Fuck it, Top of A. Weirdly, I know a lot of people like book 2 less, but the reason why I think it was so high for me is because things clicked into place. We calmed down on the loot box list. Loot obviously still happens, that is part of the RPG, that is part of the genre, but it felt less irritating. It felt less monotonous, I think is the word I want to use. We got a little bit of more of a viewpoint of the outer worlds and things going on outside the dungeon, and we had a scene of Carl without Donut having to do things on his own for a bit, and we had a scene where he fights a boss whilst avoiding violence, and he finds another smarter way of pulling it off. And so all these elements pulling together, it was like a light bulb moment. I went, oh, okay, I'm starting to see why people like this. I see. And so for the first time in a very long time, I read 2 books in a series back to back. I don't do that. I do not binge read series. I will take a gap between them. So I was rereading Stormlight. I basically marked each one for a quarter. It's like quarter 1 I shall be reading with. Oh, we've hit quarter 2. Time to get on book 2. I need a gap between them, otherwise I get burned out. But because I hit it, and I was having fun, and I finished, and I went, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna book 3. Let's keep this going. And there's stuff that's less enjoyable about 3 because you've got like the train setup, which is not as exciting, I guess, but I think some people struggle with it because they really try and figure out the mystery and keep track of stuff. I think sometimes I'm like, and Matt Dinnerman even says at the start of the book, like, don't worry about it. And I was like, yeah, I'm happy to just like let the characters figure this out, but I'm not going to try and keep track. And honestly, not worrying too much about every detail, I think, is actually a strength when it comes to reading certain books. There's also a moment in fact, I might just put this one slightly higher because there's a moment in Annika's cookbook. There's a couple of moments actually. One is a gasp, and the other was one of those moments. I told my husband to stop trying to talk to me because I was like, I cannot believe what I'm reading and I need to keep going. You need to shut up. Like normally I can be quite polite and I'll like put my foot. I'm like, yes dear, what is it that you're saying? Yeah, okay, yeah. And then if he talks too much, I'll be like, can I read please? But this was like, no, shut up, don't talk to me right now. I need to read the rest of the scene because this is insane. So for giving me a moment like that, it gets a really high A tier. Gate of the Feral Gods, I think it's down here. I think I didn't feel that excitement as fully in this one. I don't know if that's just because the books are starting to get longer at this point, and so the pacing isn't as snappy. But still really good fun. I can't wait to get on to book 5. I'm really excited to get onto that, which I think will be a little while, but I can't wait. Tomorrow. This is Litfic? Is that what we call it? Litfic? About 2 friends who became friends as kids, and then they went to university and started making games together. I think I'm gonna move things around. I think this is not getting the nuance that I want. We're gonna move these to F. And I'm gonna move from Bookshop Woman. Sorry, Orbital. That feels harsh. My Trescent's was good. Okay, no, take it back. Take it back. Sorry. So maybe I feel that way because I'm being too generous to it. I think maybe it is a C for me. This is so hard because I think there is a lot about it that is brilliantly written. I recently listened to a podcast where they read a quote from it, and I was like, yeah, that was really good. That was really clever. But I think really the reason why it's here for me is because it settles onto a trope of friends who just like piss each other off and then make each other angry, fall out, but then become friends again, and we keep jumping forward in years, and they just still kind of keep being a bit shitty, and it's hard when you know that is the point of a book, but it doesn't mean it's more enjoyable to read with that knowledge. And yeah, it just kind of left me empty, and it left me questioning things like, is it brave to write in extreme sudden loss for a character, or are you just doing that to like mess with people's emotions? Yeah, so I did struggle with this, and I think also it's really annoying when books use things like video games as sort of like decoration, which is what it is, because apparently you're not really getting the nooks and crannies of game making. It's not like a real version of that. And for people who are really into video games, I don't think you're really getting anything out of it. It's a video game book for people who don't play video games, it's that kind of thing. I'm gonna move on. The Glutton. This was weird and sad and tragic. I think it might be an A. I think it might be an A book. It does the thing where it doesn't use speech marks. But this is just like a really sad but weird, haunting tale. If you don't know, this is about the real life figure in France who would eat anything and everything and seem to have a bottomless stomach and the ability to eat inedible things. And there was a rumor that he ate a baby in a hospital. Did he eat the baby? I don't know, but that is the rumor. And I think it kind of helps knowing about the real guy, because I think you have these horrors sitting over your head and you kind of wait for them to happen. But yeah, if you want some like haunting tragedy, it was good. It's good and weird, but I like weird in my books. Are we still on the yeah, we're still on the border, cool. How do I wanna finish off? We'll do Eye of No Man. put it in B. So this, I don't think when I bought it, I don't think I realized how kind of viral it went this year. Because after reading it, I realized a lot of people also have it on their 2025 list, despite it being like 20 years old or something. I guess publishers. I think it finally got an English translation, and that then got a bit of a push from the publishers. Um, so this is about a group of women who are being kept in a basement by the government or some similar entity, um, and they are obviously not allowed to leave. They're fed basic food. They have no privacy, and as the main character realizes, they follow a weird clock. They don't follow 24 hours. Um, and some apocalypse has probably happened, or something has happened, and we do realize, yeah, some apocalyptic event has happened. And so you go in with this really interesting mystery of what has happened. But really, that's not actually what the book is about. So, minor spoiler, you never really figure out what was going on, because it's not what the book wants this to be about. It wants to be about this person who's never met a man other than the ones who stare at her with guns faced at her, but they never say a word to her. She goes through puberty not knowing what it's about. It's about survival at the end of the world. So it's very. I'm going to use the word haunting again, but man, I really wanted to solve the mystery. So that's just what takes it into B, and that probably makes me a troglodyte, but I wanted to know what it's about. I finally read Howl's Moving Castle. Very weird, in the sense it wasn't quite what I was expecting, but it was still fun. It was a good ride. Howl and Calcifer are still amusing. Sophie, I think, is a bit more of a shit in the book. I think she's a bit more mean spirited. But yeah, it's still good fun. Cute Convenience Store by the Sea, probably what would be. Typical light Japanese fiction, collection of stories, but set within, or like collection of viewpoints and events that happen to different characters in this town based around the convenience store. Very sweet, very nice. Nothing spectacular, but these are kind of like the other one. What was I talking about? Bookshop Woman, where it's nice to have like a light read to dip into while you read other stuff. 4 seasons in Japan, a bit like that, but I think this had a little bit more going on, so I might bump this up. A teenager goes to stay with his grandmother, and so we get to see this like fostering relationship between the two, and she's like really overly harsh at the start, but you learn why. Yeah, I remember it just being quite a nice story. Last non-fiction, Edible Economics. This in the start of the book, so I was just looking for books about food. In the opening, the writer warned you that he is going to trick you. He's going to use stories about food to cook you in, and then he's just going to talk at you about economics. The bastard. But it did teach me a lot, and it actually was a nice surprise. Yeah, I've learned a few things about economics, which is interesting because again, it's like one of those things you can apply to real. I say real life like it's not real; it's all real, but current times. So when you hear these sound bites that politicians say or other people online say, and then you read something like this and you go, That's not the entire truth, or there's no truth in that whatsoever. You know, one of the examples he kind of describes is so he is Korean, and then he studied in London or somewhere in the UK, I think. And he described South Korea, as he was like, 30, 40 years ago, South Korea was like this nowhere poor country that had nothing going on, and then explains some of the policies that have helped. Like, if you see footage of people wandering around Seoul in current day, if you know nothing of Korea, you'd be amazed at like the difference and the transformation that it has had in that time. And so it's kind of interesting to hear some of the policies that helped make it that way. This isn't just about Korea. This is about global things. So it's global economics and politics, and it is also short, so that does help make it easier to digest. Pun not intended. Last two, I think I read way more just lit stuff than I realized. The Heaven and Earth grocery store. And this is another one where I thought there was going to be like a juicy, spicy twist or event at the end, and that's not really what it was. Just a cool story. When was it set? I think it's the 20s. 20s, and a bit of like a shanty town where the sort of like black community are next to the Jewish community, and describing the interactions or the lack of interactions. Yeah, if you like, where am I going to put this? I think around here somewhere. Maybe up here. Yeah, we'll go with that. Yeah, if you like movies about America's past, this was good. Really well written, actually, from what I can remember, in the sense of the way the dialogue is written, to differentiate between characters, like you can almost hear how people speak, which is very good. So I've kind of knocked off the end of this, but is this SD? I think it might be. I finally read Cloud Atlas. I don't know if it's controversial, but I do still like the film. Yeah, Yellowface isn't great, and maybe other options should have been made. But reading this, I did actually appreciate the fact that the film could do something that the book couldn't. So if you don't know anything, the book follows like 6 different timelines. Yeah, 6 different eras, different timelines. So we go from the far past, near past, modern day, future, far future, apocalypse. Roughly like that. And the way it's formatted is that you go forward in time, and then you go backwards in time. So it's like a Russian doll sort of nesting format, I think he calls it. But there are themes of like, does the soul continue in another body? Characters have dreams about events that happen far in the future. Characters from the past become figures of worship. But I think because the film can make these really quick cuts, it can make it very clear when there are connecting threads between characters and events. But I did struggle with the post-apocalyptic bit, because each section has its own writing style, and the writing style of that is very intense, and you do have to put more effort into figuring out what people are saying. So I was at the point where I was looking forward to getting out of that again. But there is a key scene with Sonmi that was like shocking and horrific in the film, and it is still shocking and horrific reading it, even though I know was coming. But there is, I will say, there's like a tragedy to certain moments. Yeah, I think the film only actually covers about half of the events. It's quite a big book, so that makes sense. Yeah, it was, I think, for how well written it is, and it really took me on a journey. It was, yeah, I think it deserves to be an S. I don't know if I might read it again in the future. I'm not in a rush to, but it was excellent. It was very well done. Well, even though I said I wasn't going to ramble, I think it is like 50 plus books. So this seems, because I feel like I had a very meh year, but this seems quite top heavy. I think because I'm trying to give books a higher rating if they've been written well in a lot of aspects, even if I kind of left the book not wanting to give it, like, for example, Blood Over Brighthaven, Tainted Cup, I would have loved to. I didn't give them 5 stars because, like I said, I didn't fall in love with them in the same way as I have other books. But yeah, seeing it like this, I've fit in a lot of non-fiction, and I fit in a good variety of things, which might be why I've not read as much fantasy as I thought I would have done. There it is. Hey, and in that time, my hair is now half dry. And I am hungry, so we're gonna leave that there. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. This is everything I read or DNF'd in 2025, and hopefully I'll be back again to talk about books.